Bulimia is an eating disorder that affects more women than men. The person binge eats and then vomits the food. Now, it generally starts in the teenage years and may be associated with anorexia. It's a really serious problem because vomiting is extremely hard on the body. And some women may spend 10 to 20 years trying to solve the problem, but they don't need to because in most cases the resolution is quite straightforward. At this point, I need to make a note that this video is for people who have some knowledge and experience with NLP and hypnotherapy. If you don't, just follow along and just glean what you can from it. So the most important thing about an NLP coaching session is to structure it carefully. And what I learned from Richard Bandler many years ago was to gather just enough information to map out the structure, right? The structure of how the client does the process of whatever it is that they do, and then identify and make changes at key points to maximize the change with the least amount of time and work. And this is important for a number of reasons, because in many cases the client may have spent years trying various treatments, and when they come to the NLP hypnotherapist, they do so because they either heard about someone getting a miraculous result, or they're now at their wits' end and they're looking for a one-session cure. So you've got quite a challenge on your hands. So over the years, what I learned to do was to structure a session in which I could maximize the results in just 2 hours. Because you've got to get results in the first session that convince the client it's working. And bulimia is really just binge eating followed by purging. So maybe also take a look at my video on NLP decision strategies, because this is what you're doing. You want to map out the strategy the person's using, make the change at the key point. And so it's binging followed by purging. And I think this is what's important for people to understand, that bulimia and a lot of problems only seem insurmountable because that is how you think about it. So dealing with bulimia, it's pretty straightforward once you know how. Now, I know that I'm drawing upon 30 years of experience. God, I'm getting old. And then I've incorporated dozens of procedures and understandings into a session, but I'll try and give you the basic outline. So the session usually starts on the phone when the client makes the initial contact. And I use this time to gather information about the problem and educate the client about my approach using NLP and hypnotherapy. Now, I don't like to sell a client. What I do is to talk to them until they ask me how much it will cost. At this point, I know I've got good rapport. And from their first email contact and conversation on the phone and in the session, I'm listening for values, beliefs, attitudes, meta programs, personality traits, negative emotions, frustrations, and desired outcomes. And even though I'm not a nutritionist, I ask some basic questions about diet. The reason being is that some types of diet cause nutrient depletion, which the client may misinterpret as food cravings rather than hunger. And low-fat diets tend to lead towards high carbohydrates and nutrient depletion. Also, there's no switch in the brain for carbohydrates like there is for fats and protein. So carbs tend to suggest that you want to take another bite. And most, but not all of the binge eaters and bulimics that I've worked with have been on low-fat diets. So once the client arrives for their session and they've completed the registration form, and we spend a few minutes establishing a rapport, I usually say something to the effect, look, we've had a conversation on the phone, so tell me, once again, what is the problem, if any, and what do you want from these sessions? The client starts talking and I listen. Usually they start telling me a story, thinking that I need a lot of information. But once I get what I'm listening for, then I interrupt and ask another question, or I might draw a diagram on a piece of paper to illustrate a concept. And the first time that I interrupt, I tell them that I do it in the service of them. This means they then get accustomed to me interrupting. And one reason I interrupt is that I don't like wasting time and I want to get the outcome as quickly as possible, which makes the client happy. And another reason is that I get bored listening to stories and I can get distracted away from finding a solution to their problem. So you have to be aware of this because people can actually distract you away from their own solution. Anyway, so in the case of bulimia, you need to learn when it started, how old they were, and what happened. And as they tell the story, I listen for negative emotions. Typically, there will be a number of negative emotions. It could be fear, anxiety, abandonment, shame, sometimes guilt. But typically, you only need to deal with one or two. And I take notes on an A4 pad. And the first page has the NLP well-formed outcome questions and some key procedures printed down the right-hand side. This helps keep me on track, all right? And when I identify a problem, I write P/S in front of it. And when I get a desired outcome, I write D/0 in front of it. So this makes it easy for me to organize my session notes. And I also make notes of the procedures that I plan to use. So that's my preparation. And then once I get enough information about the problem situation, I then ask the client what they want. That is their desired outcome, what they will look like, sound like, and feel like as the new them. And this is when I usually draw the present state to desired outcome model on a piece of paper. That's on my website, and there's some videos on that too. So I have one pad, A4 pad for me, and another for them. So I write some notes. Some of the notes I write down is just for them. And so sometimes I'll write on their notepad, other times I'll ask them to write something. If it's just information, I will write it and then tell them that I'll email them a link to the information after the session. If it's important that the client write down their thoughts, then I tell them to do it so that it gets out of their mind onto the paper. So once I have enough information about the present state and have a reasonably well-formed outcome, I clear the most important negative emotion used in the NLP timeline procedure, followed by a really strong future pace. And the future pace is where you take the learnings, the resources into the future and contextualize it to their desired outcome. And there's a knack in identifying the most important negative emotion, which I think comes from experience and almost my dominant cognitive functions, introverted intuition, which I think is part of it. So anyway, so when you clear the most important negative emotion, then transformation may occur. But it's only when you incorporate that into a structured session. So when you do your procedures and make your changes, you want to incorporate it into a session. It'll be framed in the context of the session to bring about transformation. And I think I should make a note here that from the moment that I talk with the client on the phone, I'm working to help them achieve their desired outcomes. So if I can get the outcomes conversationally, I will do so. I also know that I'm talking to their unconscious mind as well as their conscious mind. This means that I also assume that the client is in trance. So they're already in trance. So I really don't need to do any fancy hypnotic inductions, and neither you too. Once you get these frames of understanding inside your mind, you'll think about people differently. So the next step is to elicit ideomotor responses using finger signals. There's a video on my channel on how to use a pendulum. So ideomotor response is using finger signals. And once the client gives a clear yes and no signal, I then utilize the trance state and ask some specific questions of the unconscious mind that presuppose a banishing of the problem. Next step is to show the client how to use a hypnosis pendulum. And this procedure in itself can be quite powerful in that the client is learning how to work with their unconscious mind and build in the ability to say yes and no. Then I get to work on the binging strategy. Now all you need is to interrupt the strategy so that it no longer runs again. All right, that's basically all they're after. And then you can do all the psychotherapy afterwards. But what they really want is to stop the binging. Same with the cigarette smokers, marijuana smokers, the people who drink too much. All they want to do is stop the behavior. So if you go for that first, then you can do all your psychotherapy type stuff to help you sustain the outcomes. So what I do is I ask the client to think of the last time that they binged. So I'm going for their strategy. I make a note of when and where that was. Then I ask, it's a how question. How did you know that it was time to binge? Was it something you saw, an image you made in your mind, or something that you said to yourself? If they start talking about an event, then I repeat the question until they either answer an image or something they said. I then use a simple procedure to turn down that thought and insert a new positive thought to redirectionalize the brain towards their desired outcome. And this procedure may be used on a number of triggers. Next step is you induce a trance state. And I keep it very simple and use a double arm levitation procedure. Then I read my script. And the reason I read my script is because the questions and suggestions need to be very specific and cover all possibilities. I then bring the client out of trance, and that is basically it. I then ask the client about their most important learnings from the session, what tasks they might give themselves over the next few days. This is when I may also check the client's reassurance strategy, and that's it. So the first session takes 2 hours, and in many cases brings about a cessation of the binging, or at least a marked reduction. And then subsequent sessions are used to reinforce and sustain the desired outcomes. So there's quite a lot in that. But hopefully you find this useful. Now, thank you for watching. If you're not already done so, please like and subscribe, making sure that you click on the bell so you get the notification about my next video. And please share the video, widely on social media. That's very helpful for me. And please leave your comments in the box below. Let me know what you liked or disliked about this video. And let me know which of my videos are your favorites and what types of videos you would like to make. Now, I'm looking at doing a membership site sometime in the future. So I'll keep you informed about that. And that's where what I would like to do is to work much more personally with you guys to help you achieve whatever outcomes you want for yourself. So you need to know what that is. All the best to you, and I look forward to seeing you again. And remember to keep on challenging everything for the truth. I've spent my entire life doing that, and I would like to share some of my discoveries with you. Whether you're an atheist or believe in a higher power, my book on God is sure to get you thinking. And part and parcel of spirituality is learning how to work with your unconscious mind, such that you can quieten the mind and get yourself to sleep when you need to. And that includes the ability to banish bad habits like cigarettes, marijuana, alcohol, chocolate, and overeating. And as a foundation to a fulfilling life, I believe everyone needs to learn how to work with their unconscious mind, how to explore deep trance and states of deep meditation. If you want to connect, you can find me on Facebook at Abbey Eagle School of Meditation.